Hey everyone, Dan here. Before we get into it, if you enjoy these videos, please hit the like and subscribe button. And keep in mind that these are my own thoughts, opinions, and ideas. These are not meant to be, nor should you take them as investment or trading advice in any way, shape, or form. Do your own due diligence, put in the work for yourself, and make your decisions based on that. Enjoy.
All right, folks, here we are on Thursday, December 26th. We're going to take a look at Plug Power today. So it's been a while since we looked at Plug, but it is getting pretty interesting at the moment. Now, it zoomed down to 160 here back in September and sort of double bottomed, two quick candles, and then has since been working itself through this 195 level and then punched up to 242 recently. So some pretty good moves at the moment. It's at least working through levels and working off of 160. I know in the vast scheme of things, it's not going to feel like some pretty good movement lately, but I did start to wonder if, something maybe more long lasting is starting to take shape. We'll see. Now, one thing I haven't put on here yet, but I will now, is some uptrend support. So I don't know if this is going to hold because this is going to be pretty new and sort of like barely confirmed, if you will. It maybe, this sort of chunk of confirmations to me aren't that helpful, but when it moves and then slams back down into it and has a nice push off of it like we saw there, that's something that I sort of take note of. So this uptrend support, we'll see if it bangs into it again, if it does anything, but if it does even continue to not bang into it, but just sort of like follows it up or what have you, it does essentially start to put in just a series of ascending triangles or flat tops as the uptrend support meets the resistance level and, gives it an opportunity to continuously pop through. Just keep in mind, at some point, these trends or these breaks that we look for, right, and an ascending triangle. Come on, Daniel. An ascending triangle. We look for it to pop through to the upside. Eventually, just like anything else, that pattern breaks, right? And eventually, at some point, it will break the down or the uptrend support, and we'll lose that, and we'll have to look for a different sort of formation or a different motion to be looking at the chart. But for the time being, until this uptrend support breaks, that's what I would be focused on looking at, is a series of ascending triangles and looking for it to continue to pop through the upside at those levels. We do also have a gap fill that closes here at about 292. I don't know if that's right on the gap. No, it's not. The low this day was 291. So I have the level at 292, not because it's a gap fill level, but because that's the level that is, to me, an actual resistance level. It just happens to be a penny over where the gap fill would happen there. That gap has been sort of mostly filled by this wick to 286, but it's just like candle wick volume, so it's not like there's a ton of volume that has persisted through there, so there might be a lot more to sort of bear some fruit in that region, in that price region, if it can get back up there and maybe then finally find its way at least through the 291, if not to test that actual 292 level that I see. So to me, those are the levels. Of course, if it loses this uptrend support like soon, then yeah, that would be like a sad little run, and we'll have to sort of reevaluate then. But for the time being, as this persists or until this breaks, this is what I'm watching. And we have a bunch of levels up to $9 just because we've been watching Plug for a very long time. So we have levels quite high versus the current price action. Now, that's not what I want. I want to hide those. I would have been sad if I had just deleted all those levels. Here's the other interesting thing. So right now, it's not the most impressive bullish crossover from these short-term EMAs, the 8, 21, and 34. Those are the short-term EMAs that I watch. But it is showing want to consistently hold support at the 34 at the moment while these short-term EMAs are in a bullish formation. 8 above the 21, 21 above the 34. And while it doesn't look, I don't know, there's probably some better example, but who knows on Plug where it would be. Like back here, you see this like more aggressive, like thrust into bullish formation, right? Like that gives you some like, ooh, like it's really sort of like pushing itself through there. But then it rejected off the 183 EMA, and that's what I'm getting to now is short-term EMA's bullish formation at the moment, looking like they might want to hold. But if we're tracking this 183, that's where it wicked off of, right? When it came up to try to close that gap and didn't quite make it. But it is still within striking distance. So we get a good few days back to back, get some nice push off of these short-term EMAs. That will thrust them into a more impressive looking bullish formation, and it will have another go at this 183. And I'm really interested to see if it can get a push through the 183 EMA and get these short-term EMAs to start crossing over the 183 EMA. Then we might be in for some actual impressive lift. So to me, this is the most critical of the motion, is getting through the 183 EMA and then having the price strength to drag the short-term EMAs above it. I almost don't care so much. I want to be careful how I phrase this, but maybe if this resonates with you, you'll understand what I'm saying. I almost don't care what the price action or the motion looks like over the 183, as long as it is dragging these short-term EMAs in a bullish formation through the 183 in a nice, impressive crossover fashion. By impressive crossover fashion, I just mean something sort of more aggressive looking like this, right? If we get a nice aggressive motion with these short-term EMAs spreading because the price action is coming in strong, the volume is kicking up, then if we get this type of a look as it passes over, as these EMAs pass through that 183, that to me is going to at least bear the best opportunity in a very long time for it to get some more significant price action in the coming weeks and months. I don't know how long it'll last or what it'll look like, but to me, this is sort of the cleanest look and the most interesting setup at the moment. Not a lot of shelves up here, especially from recent price action, right? Because it just hasn't been up in here. If we draw back to when that gap came in, sort of see what was happening just prior to the gap, it's really thin, right? That's what you would expect. There's a gap there. And then prior to that gap appearing, even then, the price action was pretty thin in there. Folks have really stepped in these lower ranges. Here's where you start to see it jump up a bit, and that's where there was a gap in there previously, right, above the current gap, the one that got filled down. But here's where you really see some motion start to come in, but this would have been accumulations around here and around here. So it could be quite interesting if it does get into that gap to see if it has some room to fly now that it's sort of, put a toe in the water for the time being with this wick here, and then pulled back. If a reboot of that gap entry point, that original gap entry point, does sort of give it an option to run toward that 292, that could be quite interesting. Now, on the Thinkorswim side of things, this is actually what alerted me to plug was the TTM squeezed indicator. So back here, we had a really lengthy trigger, right? This was through October and November, right? So it triggered for like 3 weeks or so, and then it fired and nothing happened, right? And so where we're situated right now is in a re-trigger situation, and I'm often very keen on these re-triggers and refires, especially if the price has situated itself and just stayed center of channel, right? This is just situating itself around that bright blue line in the middle of the channel, which also just happens to line up with the baseline ATR level month over month over month, that line that sits between the call trigger, which is this blue one, and the put trigger, which is that yellow or orange one. So it's spent several months now accumulating along those lines. You see the accumulation in the phase oscillator down here, right? In that all that pink that has been happening and gone through several triggers and fires, and nothing's happened. And oftentimes that would lead me to say maybe the whole TTM squeeze trigger fire mechanism just is kind of a bust on plug. But there's something about the lengthy accumulation here, something about the motion that we're seeing here with the approaches on the uptrend support and the EMAs that we just talked about that's making me kind of wonder, okay, are we getting enough of a confluence of events here between the Weeble chart and the Thinkorswim setup that maybe something is going to pop off here? And if it does, it might be too late in December to see it in December, but the January ATR levels are not that different than where it currently sits because it's been so sideways. That call trigger right now is at about 309, and the +1 ATR for January is 540. So if it were to actually get that motion over the call trigger of 309 in January, and it were to, I know I'm painting a very rosy picture here, but if it also were to reach that +1 ATR level, 540, even if it just reaches the initial ATR level that sits in between those two, 425. I mean, that still is a really huge percentage gain that is sort of like that opens the door to that possibility for January. Flip side is, and just keep this in mind, if this does have to do with the TTM squeeze indicator, when that fires, if there is an outsized reaction, that's all that the TTM squeeze indicator is looking for, is an outsized reaction. It doesn't say that that outsized reaction is coming to the upside. It could also be to the downside, right? And so if it really puts in some plummet action, then you look for it to lose this mid-range ATR here, this base ATR, I should say, and fall toward or even through like that put trigger for January, which is 167. Like things get really loosey-goosey real quickly here with the price action. It gets into negatives, for example. So we're not even going to entertain that for obvious reasons. But, I do at least still have the concept of paying attention to the put trigger, right? Does it just kind of get pinned even further? Does it get pinned below the base ATR and the put trigger, which then you're looking sideways, but also sad sideways. And if that sort of action gets put in, then it'll break this uptrend support. So that'll become obvious there anyway. So bottom line is, for my money, I'm either watching this uptrend support with these series of ascending triangles to see if that can bear out, or I'm looking at just the EMA setup to again see if it can do what I had described with that 183 EMA. To me, this is just sort of like supporting information, but I'm not going to base a ton of info on, I'm not going to base info. I'm not going to make a ton of decisions based on what's happening with the price action on the Thinkorswim study until we get some action up in here or down in here, right? If either of those happen, then yeah, I would come or reorient myself to this and say, okay, where are the levels falling for the +1, the -1, so on and so forth. But for me, I need to see if it's going to even try to do the thing. And for my eyes, being able to do the thing, this is a nice clean setup, but also because we haven't overcrowded it, the standard support and resistance with the uptrend support is also pretty clean to my eyes. All right, folks, so I hope that your trading week has been going well. And as always, I appreciate you watching, and I will see you in the next video.